Right, Shalom Aleichem, Rabotai. Welcome to our Wednesday class. And Yalkut Yosef. We are in the Yalachot of Bציעת Yadayim, Hamotzi Lefnei Haaretz. Soon we'll see Berkat Hamazon Bezrat Hashem. And last time we ended with the topic called Chatzitza. Chatzitza is somewhat of a barrier, something that you have on your hands that may make it difficult for you to do in Tila. Are you Yitzeh? Are you not Yitzeh? But we differentiate between someone that, this is important to say, if someone is a painter, and for him, certain things on his hands don't really bother him. For him, it's normal. But for someone else, it's not normal. And for the painter, a little paint here in the nail or something like that, he goes like that to events. So for him, this is normal. Then for him, that's not chatzitza. But for someone that it is chatzitza, that he goes careful, then for him, he can't do the netilah. Giacomo, baruch haba to you too. Okay, we can officially start now that you're here. Giacomo, baruch haba. All right. One of the things that is somewhat of a chatzitza or a problem to do netilah that requires you to do netilah is if someone during the meal scratches his scalp, which happens a lot, we don't notice. I'm not talking about touching the hair, I'm talking about scratching the scalp. That is considered an area that it has sweat, it could be sweaty, and therefore if you do that, if you still want to eat from the bread, then wash your hands with no bracha, but you have to wash your hands one more time. If you're not going to eat from the bread, it's okay, because again, the only reason we wash our hands for the bread is because to remind the Kohanim that when Bet HaMikdash will be rebuilt, their hands have to be pure before they eat the bread. So that will apply again if you're only going to eat from the bread. But if not, then the netilah that you did is sufficient.
Is it only scratching hair on your head, or can it be scratching hair on your arms or other places?
So you're touching a sensitive subject, because the halacha says that if you touched the areas that are covered, okay, but when I look more into this, what does it mean? Some guy, he wears always long sleeves, so is this covered? So what's considered covered? And sometimes, if you're right after a shower, even if you touch an area that is covered, it's clean. There's no sweat over there. So it's more about, is the area clean right now? Has it, sweat a little bit? The scalp is considered something that is always, releasing, right? As opposed to other places in the body, it depends. You can tell from yourself if there's, some sort of not clean, right? I guess easy to say would be like an armpit or something like that, a scratch over there. On the arms, this, that, depending on the level of sweat or who you are, how hot it is, etc. So you have to use your discretion. But regarding the scalp, it's accepted. When you scratch your scalp, you're going to need to wash your hands. So that's a good question. Yeah, it's not black and white. Now we learned this before, but it's appearing again in the halachot of Seudah. When someone goes to the bathroom, but he also wants to do netilat yadayim because he's about to do a motzi. This happens a lot in Seudah Shlishit. People come sit in Mincha. When they go to wash for Seudah Shlishit, wait, I have to go to the bathroom. They go to the bathroom, then they wash for the bathroom. And what do I do now? I wash again for a motzi. So what is the right thing to do? Anybody remember, by the way? We have spoken about this.
Yeah, you wash for Hamotzi, and then after you send Hamotzi, you eat the bread, then you say the bathroom.
Amazing. Call it over that you remember that. So yeah, that's definitely the main suggestion. That would be the classic suggestion for a person to wash one time, do a motzi, do netilat yadayim, hamotzi, and then say asher yatzar. For me, I tried that once, I'll be honest, and I forgot asher yatzar a few times. You get caught up in the meal, you start, oh my God, did I say, did I not say? So if that's the case, if you have a fear that you will forget, you are allowed to say al netilat yadayim, bracha, and then before doing a motzi, right after you wash, stop, say asher yatzar, finish asher yatzar, and then go and do the hamotzi lechem min haaretz and continue on. If you know yourself that you're not going to forget, there was one guy that used to make a knot in his tie so that he would remember it was, oh, I have to say asher yatzar, right? I don't know, you switch to wash another hand. If you teach yourself, see if you are able to remember, then that would be the right case. But if not, it's okay. You could stop between the netilah and hamotzi to say berkat asher yatzar. That is also acceptable. Now, what happens when we have a lot of people invited for the meal, and there's a line for netilat yadayim? So I washed, I'm about to say motzi, and now I had to wait 3, 4, 5 minutes until I get the motzi. Usually it happens when we have, a lot of guests, Shabbat, Chagim, Leil HaSeder, something like that. So what's the deal over there? By the way, just regarding the netilah for the bathroom and the netilah, the type of washing should be like when you wash for after the bathroom, not like when you wash for bread. For bread, we do 3 on each side in a row. After the bathroom, why? Because at the end of the day, we went to the bathroom. So we need to remove the ruach that's in the bathroom or the tumah, whatever it is, by doing 3 on each side. For Hamotzi, we said that it's actually sufficient to just do a revit on one hand and one hand. So the fact that you do 3 is additional. Over here, you don't do the 3 in a row, you do 3 steps. So what's the right way to do? The same way you do it after you go to the bathroom. Of course, as we learned, after you go to the bathroom, everybody holds you don't have to use an atlan. You could just use the faucet and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 like that. But when it comes to the Hamotzi, you do need a koch. You need something that is coming onto you like the natlan. So that's the compromise. You use the natlan, but you do 3, one after the other, like when you go after the bathroom. Right. So back to that long line, is it considered an ifsek? You can't wait for a long time as much as you want, and you said netilah. The netilah is there to serve the hamotzi lechem min haaretz. So how long? Is it a problem? So there's an ideal. The ideal is to not take longer than kedei alichat kaf bet amot. Kaf bet amot is 11 meters. It's like, let's say 40 feet. You shouldn't take longer than walking 40 feet. But in reality, we know that that's very hard to happen when you have a lot of guests. So it's not considered an ifsek. There's the ideal. So if you're alone, try to do it fast, of course. But if you have guests or whatever it is, wait, even if you wait for a while. It's not considered an ifsek. Are you allowed to talk or not? That's already a different topic. We're going to get to that. But ideally, we don't talk. Again, we'll see. When we get there, we'll see. You are allowed to talk if necessary. But ideally, don't talk. Just wait quietly. Do the hamotzi. Even if it took 5 minutes until everybody came, that's not a ifsek. It's not a problem. So the next topic is, actually, I jumped the gun a little bit. What happens between netilah and hamotzi? So there's a famous story that some rabbi came to his student and asked him a question, and he was between netilah and hamotzi, and he said, What is the halacha? According to Sefaradim, we don't have to not talk between. Shulchan Aruch writes, it's okay to talk between them. It's better not to, obviously, but we are allowed to. Litzorah, for a need. Your rabbi comes to you, you're going to say, Your rabbi, you got to respect him. So, of course, you answer him. If your friend is laughing with you and giggling, you'll understand, say like that. If it's someone honorable and maybe not so mechubad to go and, him, then it's okay. Not to mention, of course, that if it's for the purpose of the meal, past the bread, past the salt, that, of course, is for sure agreed, that it's allowed. But even off the topic, if it's needed, you can do it. And what happens if I'm after netilah, I didn't do hamotzi yet, and I hear a kaddish or I hear a kedusha? But of course, for all these things, davar sheba kedusha, I hear a beracha, I answer amen. All the people that wash their hands after me, I answer amen. They're allowed to answer davarim sheba kedusha. There's another topic, not talking, but isuk, which means doing something. For years, I was feeling uncomfortable when my wife would tell me, you washed until everybody washes, bring all the food to the table, bring the rice, bring the this, that. So you want to save time so that after Hamotzi, everybody could jump in. But on the other hand, you are doing something. Is it an ifsek? Is it not an ifsek? So I used to be careful, but really, Mikar Adin, says the Yalkut Yosef, the din is that if it's something small, like for example, giving tzedakah to a poor man, you give netilah, a guy comes tzedakah, you take out a dollar, you give to him, and then you do hamotzi, that's not considered an ifsek. An ifsek needs to be something serious, right? So use your discretion. He doesn't say what is serious, what is not serious. He says melacha ktana, a small thing like giving tzedakah won't be an ifsek. So in between the netilah and the hamotzi, better of course, you sit down on your seat, wait until you do hamotzi. But if, bring the hummus to the table, this, that, it doesn't seem to me like a big melacha. If you start bringing 30 things, maybe. But 1 or 2 things you brought to help the family. I don't know if this is a situation that only happens in my house or in every home. I'm assuming in every home. But this is a quality.
But sorry, Ziv, but if let's say you give tzedakah in the middle, your hands, they don't get dirty or something with the money, with touching it.
Good question. Even though I understand your question, but Yalkut says exactly that example of giving tzedakah. So therefore, we have to understand that the tzedakah is not dirty enough to say that your hands are now dirty and you have to do netilah. Just like you're allowed to lift, the hummus platter, as you said, could also say it's dirty. A dirt in halacha is, as we said, if you touch someone else's hand that did not do netilah, he can transfer it to you. If you touch something wet that has tumah before you eat, that's stuff that passes the tumah. But just, touching an item, not a person, it's an item. And therefore, the item doesn't accept it, doesn't transfer the tumah to you, and that's a deal. All right, that was the dinim of netilah and chatzitza. We are jumping to the next topic, which is bציעת הפת. bציעת הפת is taking the challah and cracking it, breaking it. As a child, I remember, I think a lot of mashadis do that as well, or used to do that. The grandfather, when he would do the Hamotzi, he would start ripping off pieces and tossing it right, tossing it left, everybody would catch it, and it was part of the fun of Shabbat. We'll see now that a lot of the customs that our tzaddikim grandparents did, they did because, that's how they understood. However, it may not be exactly correct. They were tzaddikim, so for them it was correct. But now that we have the ability to learn the halachot, we'll learn what's the more, I would say, relevant way to do it today, now that we are more exposed to halachot, not as much as they used to be.
Ziv, so sorry to interrupt. Just before we go, a question on the chatzitza, and I apologize, I missed last week's class, so I don't know if it was covered. Does a Band-Aid count as a chatzitza?
Oh, very nice question. We sat on this for like 10 minutes almost. A Band-Aid, a cast, all these.
Oh, you spoke it. Okay.
In a nutshell, if you want to look through it. But in a nutshell, the area that is covered by the Band-Aid, what is the fear? What is the fear? The fear is that after you did netilah, the area that was covered by a Band-Aid, all of a sudden during the meal, you're going to take it off, and now you're going to touch an area that is not tahor, right? So that could be a problem. So if it's a type of thing, a wound that you're not going to remove it during the meal, it's because it's there to cover and there's no chance he'll do it. For example, you have a cut, you put a Band-Aid on it. You don't have a plan to remove that. You could do the netilat yadayim on top of the Band-Aid and wash and say the beracha. But if it's one of those big wraps, right, and there's only one spot that has the hurt, but the wrap is like very big and it's taking much more space, then don't say I'm not gonna, that's already problematic, because there is a chance that you're gonna move that whole thing and your hand will touch. So that's how you differentiate. So in certain cases, you'll just wash one hand and eat with that hand. Let's say if it's a cast or something like that. But with a Band-Aid, the classic case of a Band-Aid, you do netilah on top of the Band-Aid, and you say an netilah too.
Thank you.
All right, so back to the Hamotzi Lechem. On Shabbat, this is the classic case where we care that the bread is complete, and we like to have two breads. So this is the example that is brought, but this could be relevant for many other cases as well. Regarding cutting the bread. So where do we break the bread from? Anybody know, is there a right place to break the bread from? So the Gemara says a story, a very interesting story, about one of the rabbis that he kind of spoke about Menashe, the king of Israel, which is one of the biggest Rishayim, even though some opinions explain that at the end of his days he did Teshuvah, and Hashem accepted Teshuvah, but he was doing bad things for the Jewish people, Avodah Zarah and whatnot. So this Menashe, the rabbi at the end of the class said, tomorrow we will talk about our friend Menashe. Menashe, the king, comes to him in his dream, to this rabbi, and says, you call me your friend? You think that because I did Avodah Zarah, that's it, you can call me your friend? I'm not Menashe, the king of Israel? Do you know, he tells him, that if you had lived in my times, you would have folded your gown from the floor so that you could run to Avodah Zarah. Which means we don't understand what the temptation for Avodah Zarah back then used to be. So don't look at me in this regard. Then Menashe, king of Israel. And then Menashe says, by the way, do you know where we cut the bread from? No, let me teach you where we cut the bread from. Then he tells him that you cut it from the hardest part of the bread, the most baked area. I don't know if hard necessarily, but fully baked. Don't cut it from an area that's more raw or something like that. Area that is fully baked. Some say that the reason he told him that is to tell him that what does it mean if an area is fully baked? It means that it probably got more time in the oven, because when you push it in, that got more in the style. He's trying to say, I'm older than you, I'm more fully baked than you, I'm more right than you. But either way, that's the halacha. Where do you cut the bread from? Try to find the area that is most baked and cut that apart, right? Although we like cutting with our hands, and this is, again, an ancient custom, but a lot of rabbis are saying today, the right way to do it is actually to slice it with a knife. I know this may be bursting a lot of holes for everybody. What do you mean a knife? They never did it with a knife. My family never did it with a knife. Genuinely, I started doing it with a knife. if I'm in a place where everybody cuts it with their hands and there's no knife, I'm not going to make a fight and noise about it. But if it's your home, if you can control it, the right way to do it actually is to cut it with a knife. Now, some say that before you make the beracha, you make a little slice in the bread, and then you say the beracha. What's the origin? Where did this come from? If you notice Ashkenazim, they always use a knife, and they always do that. You take the bread, they make a little slit, and then they say Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, and then they continue cutting. So explains the Yalkut Yosef, why does this halacha exist? Because sometimes breads were really hard and rough, and if you don't make a slit before, then after you say Hamotzi, you're going to start cutting the bread. It's going to be so hard, it's going to take you a long time, and you need to taste from the bread within a few seconds. It's not like before when I did Netilah and I could wait until I do Hamotzi. When I do Hamotzi, I have to say a bracha. Imagine you say Abore Preetz on an apple, and now you have waiting 20 seconds. Problem, you say the bracha, you can't wait so long. So the Yalkut Yosef, since the bread was very hard, if they wouldn't prepare a cut, then they wouldn't be able to penetrate it quickly, and it would take them a long time to cut it. Thank God today we have amazing knives, and also the bread is much softer. And he also says that if this is on Shabbat, if you're cutting the bread, then you may cause the bread to be not lechem mishneh. Lechem mishneh is two complete breads. But then he says something else that's important to know. What does it mean cutting the bread? He says cutting the bread, it's only considered cut in a problematic way that you can't do lechem mishneh on it, is if I'm going to lift it from one side, let's say it's a challah, and I lift it from here and I made a cut here, if this piece is going to fall off now. But if it's still standing as one piece, when I made a tiny little sliver on top, that's still considered a full bread. That's kosher for lechem mishneh. So sometimes you have like a little crack in a challah. Oh my God, I can't do hamotzi on this. Give me a full one. No. If the challah is standing on its own, you don't have to support it. Then it's considered one piece. It's not considered that it broke. And you could do hamotzi on that. Bottom line, let's conclude. Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Slice it with a knife. Says the Yalkut Yosef also that if you spoke in between the Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, you're cutting, and your friends say hi, say, oh, hi. Now you want to take the piece of bread in your mouth, you have to say the beracha again. You cannot stop between the beracha and the tasting. Unless, anybody know what unless? Unless it's for the beracha. What can an example be that it's for the beracha? Pass me the salt. Custom is to dip it in salt. You said Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, salt. They give you the salt, you don't have to say beracha then, because it's there to serve the beracha. But anything else, you would have to repeat the beracha. He says, however, to begin with, don't build on it, don't count on that. Don't wait to ask for the salt after. Before you do Hamotzi, find the salt shaker, pour a little bit, then dip it 3 times. The custom is to dip it 3 times. It's Shem Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, Bishlashis, is 26. So 26, each time when you dip, have a kavanah of 26, 26, 26. 3 times 26 is 78, which is the gematria of lechem, of bread. And also the gematria of melach. Melach and lechem are the same word as salt. So you're hinting to the bread, to the salt over here. And the combination between melach and lechem, which is 78 plus 78 is 156. That's the gematria of Yosef HaTzadik. And Yosef was he who broke bread for the world when there was hunger. So all of these remazim are in there when you're dipping it 3 times. Don't say, I dip it 1 time. No, dip it 3 times. There's a reason why everybody's doing it 3 times. Good to dip it 3 times, but ask for the salt before you start the beracha.
And why do we dip in the first place?
So the pasuk says that on your korban, which today is like our table, there should always be salt, right? So that's the source. However,
it's not good enough to like just pour the salt on top.
Oh, I mean, if you pour the salt on top, you are keeping the pasuk. The pasuk says, I'm saying the pasuk right? It means that you should have salt on the paper. Yeah. However, if you want to gain from the remazim, from the hints I just mentioned, that you get to Yosef and the melach and lechem, so I pour the salt next to the bread, and then when I take the bread, I do 1, 2, 3, and take a bite for myself. Then 1, 2, 3, dip, pass to the others, pass to the others. That's how I do it. Again, you're going to another level of doing something when you're adding remazim, secrets. But if you just have salt over there, some even say there's already salt in the challah. I don't even need to add. Possible if the challah has salt and you want to be upset, but the custom is to dip it. You dip it, I think that would be copying the custom and some hints there Why not? Why miss on that? Also, you have to be careful to say the beracha when the bread is in your hands. Sometimes there's two huge chalot. You don't want to lift them. They're on the table. You're saying Hamotzi lechem min haaretz and you break. You have to make contact with the bread while you're saying Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We're passing one more page of my notes. All right.
Ziv, question: how do you hold the two breads? Because I know a lot of people do it different ways.
Oh, big.
I know you put it on top of each other. You have to take the one on the bottom.
So there's a big discussion around this. I'm going to tell you what I find to be, and I was recommended to do this, a good solution to be, let's say, machloket. But there's a machloket if the piece of bread that you're going to break off the bread from to give for everybody, should it be the top bread or should it be the bottom bread? Okay? Some say there's even a difference between the night and the day. So in order to avoid this conflict, some also say always what's in the right hand. So you have a lot of different opinions. So someone recommended to me, and I think it's a good idea, a solution where you cover all opinions. You hold the bread in right and left. Eventually, you're going to use the bread that's in the right hand. But is it on top or on the bottom? So I hold them together and I say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. So at any given point, each one of them was top and bottom. So whichever one that I use, I'm keeping all the opinions. So I like this idea. It's kind of, Yotzei Yedei Chova. At the end of the day, if you just take the one from your right hand, of course you are okay. Whatever you do, you have what to lean on. But, the chibuv mitzvah, when you want to show Hashem that you're doing the mitzvah with attention to it, Ze eli ve'anveu, yitna'el lefanav b'mitzvot. This is my God, and I should do his mitzvot with love, with extra careful. So try to cover as many opinions as you can. So I found that's a good solution, but I'm not saying it's the halacha. Don't get me wrong. This is halacha. Halacha, at the end of the day, whatever you do, you have what to rely on. But if you want to try, to be more careful,
Okay.
I think that's a good solution.
So when you say the bracha, you have to hold it in your hands. And what about when you say the thing before, Enei kol elecha v'saver, that doesn't...
You're not required to hold it. That's just a psukim. It's our custom to say that before. Now,
Okay.
didn't say that psukim, right? It's just us. I hold it from the beginning, but you don't have to hold it while you're saying that. The requirement to hold is during the beracha. Just like, by the way, when you're about to eat the apple, I always give the apple example. Don't say the beracha if the apple's not in your hand. Hold it, recommended, in your right hand. When you say brachot, hold the item in your right hand. That's the right way to say the bracha. Now, I have a lot of guests and I want to be polite, so I don't want to feed myself before I offer bread to others. So sometimes what happens, the guy starts cutting 20 pieces of challah, he cuts it once like that, then another 10 times like that, and he gives, and only after he gives to everybody, he eats it. It's very wrong. The person that said the beracha cuts one slice for himself, first of all. Once you enjoy the bread, now start giving out to others. And I also heard that it's important that when the bread is being passed, you make contact with the bread. Don't be like, oh, I'm going to be nice. I'm going to give it to the guy next to me. The bread is right in front of you. You're skipping over the mitzvah. If you want to be nice and pass it over, take even a crumb, put it in your mouth, and pass the rest down. But at least now it passed before you and you didn't skip on the mitzvah. So whoever the bread comes across him, taste it. Don't pass it down before you get a taste from it. That's a recommendation that I want to give you today. But you have to eat from the bread right after you said the beracha. Don't start slicing for everybody else. Slice one for yourself so you don't have any afsaka. Again, we said if you do a small melacha, like giving a coin to ani is one thing, right? But starting to do these big things, it's already, it could take some time if you have a lot of guests. Cut for yourself, taste it, and then cut it for everybody else.
And don't throw the pieces, I heard, right? No throwing.
Exactly. We cut it and we pass it down. So some guy has a plate. He passes it down in a plate, or he runs to his wife, he gives it to her, he puts it on her plate. But if you're just passing it, like sometimes there's so many people, so you put pieces on this side, and everybody starts passing it down. What I say to everybody that's starting to pass it down, grab a crumb. If you don't want to be disrespectful, maybe their elders, this, that, grab a crumb, it touched your hand, grab a crumb, put it in your mouth. No one needs to even see, but then pass it down so that you don't skip on the mitzvah that's coming across to you.
Does each person have to say the bracha for themselves after, or if by them answering amen?
Good question. So obviously, we want to be Yotzei Yedei Chova from his bracha. Why? because he's the only one that's holding lechem mishneh. He's holding two breads. So if I say it for myself, I may be saying Hamotzi, which is nice, but I don't have the mitzvah of having a lechem mishneh on Shabbat. Zecher laman. The man, when it came down from the sky, had a layer on the bottom and on top of dew. It was protected. So because we want to commemorate that, we have lechem mishneh. Also because, that's the cover that we put under the bread and on top of the bread. The lechem mishneh is because on Friday they would get an additional amount of food so that on Shabbat the man won't come down. So to commemorate that, we hold two chalot. So if I'm going to be yotzei yedei chova him, then I have two chalot. But if I'm going to say it by myself, I'm missing out. And that's actually our next topic. If I want to be yotzei yedei chova from him and his beracha and his lechem mishneh, then I also cannot talk until I taste. But if I spoke, then I'll have to say a bracha again. And if I don't have two chalot that are complete next to me, I'm missing out on this mitzvah. So better not to talk until you taste the piece. But if you do want to taste before the guy tasted himself, let's say he said Hamotzi lechem and he's cutting. If you have two buns before you and you want to taste, let's say in Sudash Lishit, when there are 100 people like in Sharei Rachamim, so one guy is doing Hamotzi lechem for everybody. If I have two pitot next to me, I don't have to wait until he gives me a piece of his pita. He said the bracha, I could say amen on those two pitot and take a piece. Why? I had lechem mishneh in front of me. So I could pick my own. But if I didn't, I wouldn't recommend in Sharei Rachamim to wait until that is going to come to you. Your friend has a pita, take two together and do it like that, or else you're gonna wait for a while. Lekatchila also, and we'll conclude with this. Is it enough that the bread is in my mouth to start talking, or do I have to swallow the piece of bread that is in my mouth? We generally don't recommend to talk while your mouth is full, but let's say, you put a small piece and someone asks you something and you want to say, yeah, or something like that. Can I or can I not? Says the Yalkut Yosef, lekatchila, do not talk until you swallow. But if you did, you do not have to say bracha again. Why? Because there's something called hana'at hachef. Translation, the pleasure of the palate. Your mouth enjoyed it, even though your gut, your stomach didn't enjoy it yet. Since there was joy in your mouth from it, it's sufficient enough to make your bracha land onto something, and you won't have to repeat the bracha. We'll continue from here next week with Hashem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chazak Baruch.
Thank you.